106 سنين 106 سنين الحمد لله.
Well, hello and welcome, everybody. I'm Anisa Mehdi, Executive Director of the Abraham Path Initiative. And we're meeting you on the Abraham Path today on the shores of a lake in central Maine, the northeasternmost state in the United States. In Maine, the famous Appalachian Trail makes its dramatic conclusion at the peak of Mount Katahdin. The Appalachian Trail is 2,200 miles long. And over the course of Abraham Path Initiative's interventions in the region, we have created and supported the creation of 1,200 miles of walking trail. It's just so beautiful there, just like it is here. In Iraq, my father's homeland, in Jordan, the nation that I served as a Fulbright scholar, in Palestine, Turkey, and Sinai. You'll find rocky mountains and snow-covered mountains and gardens and forests and lakes and deserts and villages filled with welcoming people, offering you sweet tea and fabulous meals. That may be not what you normally hear about the Middle East. And that's why we're here. And that's why the panelists we've chosen to speak with you today are here too. We're really here in part to help dispel myths about the region we call the Middle East. So let me introduce you now to our panelists. Louise Sibley became a communications volunteer for API in 2010, sharing her professional knowledge with our fairly young organization at the time. Hi, Louise. From 2013 to 2016, she sat on API's board of directors. And she still runs a small educational charity called the UK Friends of Abraham's Path, which is intent on informing British travelers about walking in the Middle East. She herself has led 3 walking journeys through the region, including a month-long trip that started in Cairo and ended in Jordan's spectacular Wadi Rum. Louise is joining us from London. We have with us today Alix Hopkins. Alix has worked on environmental conservation and trail projects for more than 35 years. You've been a staff person, a consultant, and a volunteer leader. Alix was the first-time director of Portland Trails, an urban NGO in Maine, helping a community fulfill its 100-year-old dream of connecting waterfront, green spaces, and Portland's city center. The success of that project led to the writing of her first book, which is called Groundswell: Stories of Saving Places, Finding Community. It's a how-to for emerging citizen leaders in the US and beyond. And Alix joins us also here from the state of Maine. With us, we have Hassan Muammar. Hassan is an architect and a civil engineer from the beautiful terraced town of Batir. He's an environmental advocate with training from UNESCO in terrace conservation. And you can take one of his tours of the aqueducts and terraces of Batir on API's YouTube channel. Hassan has successfully helped save his town from the Israel separation wall that would have devastated Batir's centuries-old agricultural tradition. Now Batir has UNESCO World Heritage Site status. And Hassan will be talking about being a guide in Palestine. Welcome, Hassan. Joining us also is Noé Shoker, coming from Geneva. Noé grew up in Switzerland. He's a global traveler with 3 nationalities. Noé is a junior at Columbia University, double majoring in Middle Eastern studies and political science. He's a college athlete, folks. He's in Division I fencing at Columbia, and Columbia is one of the top fencing teams in the United States. So we're very proud of that accomplishment, along with your other ones, Noé. He is currently looking for internships and job opportunities in management consulting. Keep that in mind. Finally, joining us from Erbil, Iraq, is Laween Mohammed. Laween is Kurdish, originally from Syria. He's a scholar of English literature, and I recommend, if you have a chance, to have a conversation with him about Samuel Beckett. Lewin taught literature in Syria before fleeing to Iraq during the Civil War. He lives in Erbil now, the capital of the Kurdistan region of Iraq, where he has a new community and has found new work, some of which is in production, webinar production, television production, and as an essential part of API's team in Northern Iraq, Lewin is part of our leadership in scouting new trails and helping us grow new networks. Before we get started, though, I want to show you a map of where we are talking about. This part of the map shows Asia and Africa and Europe. The green area, which is our area of focus, is in the western part of Asia, the southwest part of Asia. And so often you'll hear me refer to the Middle East as Southwest Asia. It doesn't have quite the same political overtones, and it is geographically sound. Now let's move back out, and you can see where the regions are that we're talking about. So we'll be hearing about southeastern Sinai. We will be hearing about the West Bank of the Jordan River. We will be hearing about the East Bank of the Jordan River. We will be, let's get up here, going farther north. Here is Turkey, South Central Turkey. And we will be hearing about walking there, as well as further east in Iraq, where we have new trail under construction. And so that should place us geographically, and it's just an enormous area. And I think it's important for us to be aware of the size of the region we're discussing and its intricacies and its delicacies. Right now, we're going to hear from Louise Sibley. Louise Sibley is coming to us from London. She has traveled 22 times to the region, folks. And she and I have walked together several times. Wherever we go together, Louise and I like to take selfies. So here we are in Petra, and here we are in Palestine. She has walked in Palestine, Jordan, Sinai, and Turkey. And Louise will be sharing about her 10-day journey in southeastern Turkey in 2012 now with you. Louise, the screen is yours.
Thank you. Right, okay, so I'm going to take you from the notional beginning of the Abraham Path. At least it was when we first started working on this grand project. And I'm going to take you on a very briefly on the journey I took in 2012. Now, bearing in mind that that's nearly 10 years ago, I did have to do an awful lot of looking up of my notes and things. I mean, it was a memorable journey, but one's memory isn't always accurate. So I'm going to just show you a little bit about where we walked, show you a few photographs, and then sum up with my impression at the time, which has a slight hazard warning on it because things have changed in the region quite a lot since I wrote those few words. So Urfa, or Sanlurfa as it's now called, is where we flew into. I was leading a small group of, first of all, 3 of us, and then 3 more people joined us. And I had a local escort, and the whole journey was put together by a lady called Alison Tannick, who lived out there. She now lives back in England, who did an absolute miraculous job with her husband of scouting and developing the trail in Turkey. Up until 2011, really the trail was a little bit of a walk around Sanlurfa, and a little bit, if you can see where my thing is, a little bit of a walk around Haran, which is around here somewhere. And they actually created a proper walking trail, and I was asked or volunteered to be the first tourist group to go on it, and it was a real eye-opener, unlike anything I've ever done before, and really quite an extraordinary trip. So we were met at Sanlurfa Airport by Alison's husband, who took us up to this little village right at the top of the trail here, which was called Yuvajili and was in deeply rural. It's not actually central Turkey. It's because the most of Turkey is sort of hanging above the Mediterranean. It's southeastern Turkey. It's very remote. It's very rural. The government's done a lot of projects down there. This is the map we had at the time. I will say, if you look on Google Maps now, you won't find these names on it. There's been quite a lot of political change in the last 10 years, and quite a lot of the names have been changed. Down right, just so you know where we are, down at the bottom here, this long line saying just above the 712 is the border with Syria. So we started up in Yavajali. We spent a night and a day there, really being briefed on local customs, because we were going to places that had never seen international tourists before. They hadn't actually seen too many Turkish tourists, for as far as I know. So tourists were both a promise and a threat, and we had to handle ourselves very, very carefully indeed, which is all part of the fascination of the trip. And one of the things I was told very quickly was that my long skirt, which I'd bought, wasn't long enough. I bought it specially for the trip, and it just simply wasn't long enough. So I was able to walk in long trousers when we were just crossing the fields, but the minute we came into anything close to a village, I had to don this long skirt, because it was all part of the gradual acceptance of tourism in the region, that we shouldn't give offense to local customs. So we traveled all the way down here, and we did this little loop round here, and we ended up back in Urfa to fly out. This is the area we started in. These are Bronze Age burial mounds. So we're thrown into early agriculture, Bronze Age villages. This was very typical at the time. It was April. We were walking through fields, as you can see, just the little three of us there, and we're walking towards a village there. Our next stop was a place called Goli. You may recognize this lady from the Abraham Path video. Again, very conservative, very, very small village. This poor girl, because I tried to go out for a walk, rushed out to help me go for a walk, because women aren't allowed out on their own then. I don't know about now. And she was carrying this gorgeous little baby with her. And then she picked up a goat, and I thought, really, I can't make this poor woman go on a walk. So I stopped that. Our next stop was a little place called Biazit, and we stayed in this very primitive and simple home, but we were made absolutely welcome by this lovely gentleman here who was a farmer and showed us all around his farm. And we got a real sense as to, what farming territory is like in that part of the world. Very simple. And here's a really good example of that, which is this woman who is about to pound grain to make flour. And this was, in a place quite near a caravanserai. And she is wearing the typical headdress of the Kurdish people in that area. And I have to say, when she got out her big pounding thing to pound the grain in this, her husband rushed up, ever ready for a promotional opportunity, and grabbed the pounder from her and started pounding the grain while we took photos. And the minute we stopped taking photos, he handed it all back to her to do, which made me laugh like a drain. And this is more towards the end of our trip, where we were in a place called Somator. It's where all the early sun worship was carried on, and we climbed up quite a hill, and I don't have any decent pictures of it, unfortunately, and saw some really astonishing landscapes. The whole landscape of southeastern Turkey is quite unlike anywhere else I've ever seen in the world, and certainly unlike anywhere else in the Middle East. And then finally, just to give you a quick picture of Göbekli Tepe, which has become rather famous, which is older than the pyramids, older than almost any religious site you're ever likely to come across. And it's changed people's understanding of how religion and agriculture and settlement happened. And we were very lucky to get there just as it was beginning to be open to the public. So that's my whistle-stop tour of Turkey. Anissa, have I got time to just give you a little quote?
Please do.
Okay, so I came back and I was absolutely overwhelmed by this journey and all the things that we'd seen and learnt. And I wrote this at the end of all my notes. And I would say that at the time, walking in those rural areas, and probably still, was a rather extraordinary thing to do. So I wrote this. For the first time, I got a real sense of what it means to be a pilgrim. The journey showed me that while walking may be construed as eccentric by your hosts, pilgrimage is accepted as a sign of a higher purpose to your journey, a holiness. I hesitate to say that I've been on a pilgrimage, and frankly, I'm not sure whether I did have a higher motive for the journey. But as a traveler in the Middle East, being a pilgrim is the only identity which is both simultaneously excusable and makes sense. I got a real feeling that this journey of creating the path and walking it was meaningful. There were so many moments of ecstatic reflection and pure enjoyment in the walk. I'm sure that we're doing something of worth, provided we do not commit the hubris of trying to bring about change through patronage or deceive ourselves into thinking we can solve from the outside conflicts which affect these territories. Walking without impact, making friends, experiencing and appreciating the other, offering only what is wanted, that is quite enough.
Well, I'm glad we had a chance to hear that, Louise. Thank you so much. And we will invite now Alix Hopkins to share with us. She's coming to us, as I mentioned before, from Maine, only about 2 hours drive from me. And I look forward to the time, Alix, where you and I can sit in the same room together.
Me too. Thank you. Hi, everybody. I am so honored and grateful to be part of this. Anissa, thank you so much. As a longtime conservationist and author with an emphasis on partnerships, communications, and trails, I wrote this book published in 2005 by the Trust for Public Land to help inspire and train emerging community leaders who had a great idea and lots of energy, but needing a little help to get started. So I first learned about the API through my facilitating a number of cultural and environmental exchanges in the Middle East starting in 2007. From the start, I was astounded by the people I met, by their projects, by their passion, persistence, kindness, knowledge, and humor. Most importantly, though, by the fact that they even bothered to undertake these projects, given the myriad daily challenges they faced. Because the API epitomized both a kindred organization and a mission similar to my work of 35 years, I became interested in learning more about it firsthand. In speaking with a number of people associated with the organization, I was directed to Isa Dwikat, a hiking guide based in the northern Jordan village of Ajloun. In May of 2016, I signed up to walk with him for 5 hours on a hike of moderate to medium difficulty, plus an overnight homestay with his family. In this photo, Isa and I were perched on the side of a cliff overlooking the valley above his house. He told me that he also teaches climbing to students here. The terrain was varied. We climbed along dry stream beds and dense forests that open up to vistas that included terraced landscapes and limestone outcroppings. One of my favorite places, where we stopped for a fine lunch of vegetable stew that Isa cooked over an open fire, was adjacent to this ancient Roman quarry in the middle of nowhere with no tourists in sight. The photo does not do the scene justice. Some of those limestone blocks were the size of small cars. I was particularly grateful to have Isa to myself as the sole hiker that day. Isa regularly guides 3 or 4 to 20, ranging from 3 or 4 to 20 people, from US ambassadors to hikers of all ages to school children. Because I had him to myself, we could talk about the importance of trails and community partnerships, finding common ground in both our topics and challenges. One of the aspects that I found commonality with in my work and in his work is trying to encourage skeptical people to join in and help, and in this case, as homestay hosts and trail guides. And we found, this is a universal issue for people who they just need to get started. They need to overcome their fear and try. And they almost always have great experiences as hosts. As we descended toward Isa's house at the hike's end, we paused in his family's orchards, filling up on delicious ripe apricots and plums. Upon our return, I met Isa's wife, Iman, a friendly and gracious woman. We soon fell into an easy conversation, comparing notes about our cultures, recipes, and other things. Isa and Iman have 5 children, the oldest being 2 teenagers, and like teenagers, they were not much in evidence, though they were friendly when I actually managed to see them. When I complimented Iman on her scarf, she quickly took it off and gave it to me, despite my protests. It was unbelievable. That has never happened to me. And that is, to me, in my experiences, that happens often. It really does. You have to be careful about what you say you like, because then they'll just give it to you. Fortunately, I had also brought some gifts for them. After a brief rest in the comfortable dorm room where I stayed, I returned to the main house for a sumptuous dinner of chicken, rice, tabbouleh, and various salads. This photo shows the calm before the storm when 3 adults and 5 children partook of the feast. You can only imagine. I have so much respect for parents who seek to introduce their children to people of different cultures by sharing their homes with strangers. It is a huge risk, but one that usually returns infinite rewards. It certainly did that for me, being able to meet them and being part of their world for a day. After supper, I played with the 2 youngest boys, Samer and Tamer, then 3 and 4. They did not stop. Round and round and round we went, until the youngest crumpled to the rug in slow motion, curled in a ball, fast asleep. We all laughed uproariously. Does this happen every night? I asked Iman. Every night, she said. The face of the Abraham path was with us all in that room just then. And yep, I know it is a blurry photograph, but they never stayed still. And I actually love that photograph. So in conclusion, I must share that this experience, with both its revelations and commonalities, gave me ever greater impetus to continue work on my now 10-year quest to collect stories for my second book, this time about conservation and community in the Middle East. I so look forward to another chance to hike along the Abraham path when the time is right. It has been an earth-changing experience that began in 2007 when I responded, why do you want me to facilitate exchanges in the Middle East? I've never been there. I don't know anything about it. Do I even want to go? And I said, you get off your butt and out of your box and you go. And it has changed my entire life. So thank you so much, Anissa, for asking me.
Alex, it's wonderful to hear your stories, and you bring back many evenings with Isa and his family and Iman and the children. It's just a great family along the northern part of what is now the Jordan Trail. Thank you. We were going to bring Hassan Muammer up next. Hassan and I first met during a walk with members of the board and friends of the Abraham Path Initiative. We met in Palestine, and he was then not functioning as a civil engineer or an environmental advocate, but in fact as the coordinator and location producer of a film team. And this, you see him in action, holding steady the camera person, making sure she doesn't fall over. So Hassan, tell us about Batir and what are you up to?
Thank you, dear Anissa, for this introduction. And I'm really grateful and honored to be with you tonight and with everybody there and to share their stories and to learn more about their experiences all over the world and in the Middle East. Well, my story started really in a very young age in the beginnings when I started joining my grandfather when I was 6 and 7 years old to go to our field around my village. And that created a lot of questions always at that age. Why these names of places looks like that? Why these trees is in this shape? Why we go in different seasons? And that makes me wonder always, what can I do next to understand more? This is why I chose with you today to win a little bit of daylight, to show you part of the farms and the fields that have our olive trees over here. It's getting quite dark here, and fig trees. And always these trees were like multiple questions for me. From there, I started, after I finished my first degree and studying, to look more into details about my village, its history, why it was important being located between the most two important cities in West Bank, Bethlehem and Jerusalem, and how much human investment has been done into that area. Therefore, I joined a team of landscapers and architects to do a full survey of the area. And this was our first introduction to Batir, to understand more where we are and what do we have, what kind of natural and cultural landmarks under the circumstances that we face, unfortunately, in Palestine, under occupation or being under occupation. There is lots of challenges when people spoke about the subjects. But for us, like, it was like an interest and a curiosity to learn more, and how we could present that to the world, how we could show Palestine and the model of Batir to the rest of the world. Therefore, it took us 4 years to map and survey every single thing in my village, with all its ancient terraces, aqueducts, 7 water springs, natural cliffs. And the most important is the historical footpath that was created during the past eras between Jerusalem and Bethlehem, all the way to the coastal area of Palestine, where unfortunately the geopolitical situation has cut most part of it. So people cannot really access or walk these trails from Jerusalem to Jaffa under specific circumstances going through West Bank because of the walls and the checkpoints and so on. So we decided to take some parts of these historical footpaths to restore them and to rehabilitate them back and to consider them as the first hiking trails in the region. This was 2009, 2010, and this was my first experience on being part of creating trail. And this opened lots of other doors to meet people, to get being an ambassador for your village and for your area is a big task that you have to be well prepared for. So you need to study history, geology, fauna and flora. And this is where I found myself getting into all that step by step until I become the project coordinator for the whole progress to create the first eco museum in West Bank, which is located again in my hometown. Before it was announced as a World Heritage Site under UNESCO umbrella in 2014. Therefore, my interest has been developed more and more into learn more about other locations in West Bank, join more expertise, learn from more experts on the area. And later on in 2016, Anissa, when we first met, that was my first experience with API on filming the trail and the experiences we had all over the area for the 330 kilometers from Jenin to the southern part of West Bank to Hebron. And that even opened and more and created more passion for me to learn more and to be part of all that. And then, fortunately, when footpaths crossed and you meet all over people on these paths, we got a new opportunity to work together on the Arabian areas in Saudi Arabia. And that's where it has been a new experience for me, not only to go and discover that area, but also to use all the tools and the expertise that I've learned for the past years to implement there. And that is where I created like hundreds of friendships with people. And also I had a team that's one of the best teams ever. They become like my family, not only friends too, with John Atik, Martina Sedlakova, Anissa Mahdi, and all the people. this was an excellent experience in how to show a different way of Palestinian way implemented in other places, because human beings at the end all intersect into specific human bases, and they share a lot of cultural heritage aspects. They share a lot of good cuisine and food. Maybe there are different mixes, maybe there are different ways. When we start talking about old stories that we always heard about Saudi Arabia, and you mix it and connect it with Jordan and Palestine, and then you learn about the Nabateans, how were they spreaded all over there. This was like an experience you would share with people, and you would tell for like everyone. That actually one of the best experiences I ever had. I don't know how much time I do have left still to tell you more.
I think you've made the most important point we want to hear here, which is no matter what divides us, what we have in common and what we share is far greater. And
Absolutely.
traveling gives you a chance to understand that. You've said that beautifully, Hassan. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you everyone for listening. And
now I want to introduce Noe Shoker, who is with us from Geneva. I first met Noe in 2018 on a walk in the Sinai, and he was, in fact, not even the youngest member of our team, but you were in high school at the time, and you were certainly the best selfie taker, Noe. Thank you so much for this photo, which brings me a great deal of joy.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Yeah, that trip was a blast, and as you can see, everyone in the photo is having fun. So our trip started in a very bizarre fashion as we had to cross borders. We had to cross from the Israeli border in Eilat into the Sinai, which is through the Egyptian border. So passing through two very secure, militarized borders was very stressful for the beginning of a trip, especially as a lot of people were going through, whether it was for holidays or for family vacations. So it took quite a time, almost half the first day of our trip. But once we were through, we made it to this village, this town called Nuweiba, which, as it was pointed out in the map, was our first stop in our trip, which was almost dreamlike. The first sort of scene of such a relaxing atmosphere. The first sort of scene like that I'd seen in the Middle East. It was right on the water. You could see the shores of Saudi Arabia on the other side, lining up at night, the large towns and skyscrapers of the Saudi Arabian shore. But on the Egyptian shore, everything was incredibly calm. You could almost call it a yoga retreat in the Maldives, but in fact, it was the Sinai in Egypt. And it really sort of changed the atmosphere from this sort of secure military border, sort of very conflict heavy, to this very relaxing atmosphere. So that was a very interesting first day that introduced us to the Sinai. And I think that is also like a main point when you see all the landscape of the Sinai is the emptiness and the space. And I think that is something that is really recurring in the Middle East, but very different from what you see in the West Bank or even in Jordan. And as you can see from these pictures, on the left is sort of a landscape from our third day hiking. And then on the second one is one of the many canyons that we had to walk through, which was very surreal because you sometimes had to walk above these rocks and these difficult paths, but somehow the guides always knew what they were going, and we were never lost, never unsure of our path. So as I said before, the Sinai was considered an unsafe place because at that time in 2018, I believe a few weeks before our departure, there was an airplane that was shot down. I believe a Russian airplane flying to Cairo, and was shot down by some extremists or a group of people in the northern part of the Sinai, so near the Gaza Strip and that area. And as such, the whole area of the Sinai itself, that small Egyptian part on the Asian continent, was classified as unsafe. And so no direct flights were to Eilat. So we had to go from Tel Aviv down to Eilat and then crossing the border. But when I was in the Sinai, especially the southern part, which was much safer and much more open for tourist activity, I never felt unsafe at all, because we were always accompanied by guides. we were almost felt integrated and welcomed into the tribe. The Bedouin tribes that existed there and that led us, guided us, fed us, and helped us through our trip. And I think that's also a common point of hospitality that we've seen from Alix and Louise, talking about all the people that they've stayed with, met with, had conversations with, formed friendships with. So in that sense, I was completely safe, and never did I feel like I was in a country with terrorism or something like that. So I think that really reflects the dichotomy sometimes that you have. You can see from the outside or from the media or from what other people tell you. But then when you arrive at the place and you meet the people who live there, you really understand the situation. One of the best parts of the adventure were the guides. One of the guides' name was Musallam. I forgot the name of the other guide. I'm sure Anissa could help. But they were a great example of how the Middle East is changing, but how you can still really appreciate the traditions and culture that exists there for thousands of years. So they've all been trained in leading groups and hiking different trails and helping out different experience levels in hiking, because the paths were quite challenging. As you can see, they have these special hiking backpacks and the jackets, but also underneath, they have the traditional garbs. They were always trying to take out their pack of smokes, their beards. They have the kafia, which is the traditional Bedouin red and white scarf to protect from the sun. So you have those two sort of angles of the modern sort of using new aspects of understanding nature, but as well keeping with the traditions and everything that makes their existence in the Sinai so important. And they were so knowledgeable. As you can see on the right, our guide Musallam, every time we would stop by the rare green plant or oasis, there would always be something to say about the plant, whether this plant helped against mosquito bites, which were pretty often in the evening, or was a great sweetener for the tea, which was already very sweet if any of you have traveled to the Middle East. So there was always an extra information that they would give us about the land that seemed so barren, but yet so rich. And then I'm going to just talk about our experience on Mount Sinai, which, as you can see here, was probably the highlight of our trip. It was our final destination. We had to wake up at 3 a.m. I think everyone who was on that trip will remember that, or not, because it was so early. We had to wake up at 3 a.m. and walk up for the sunrise, which was around 5:30, 6 a.m. And it is a traditional hike that's done so that you can really enjoy the experience, because you are in such a sacred and important part of the world. So Mount Sinai, just as a context, is where Moses was believed to have received the commandments from in the Bible, and also in Islam, Moses is a very prominent prophet. So it's very a union of all the Abrahamic religions find importance in this place. And waking up, having to go through the crucible of walking up the mountain for 2.5, 3 hours, and then finally seeing the sunrise was almost astonishing. The nature, the spirituality, and the finality of the hike was very special. And just a few last words about why we should walk the Middle East. I find that the experience, especially as a young teenager, was extremely unique. You would not find that anywhere else. And you'll have a great time meeting so many people, so many diverse individuals, from the guides to the cooks, even the Toyota drivers in the very unsafe roads sometimes. But you'll always meet amazing people, and I would really highly recommend anyone to go, and especially bring your kids or anyone else that you can. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Noe. We're going to move on to the Kurdistan region of Iraq with Laween Mohammed. We had hoped to be in Iraq this fall. It doesn't look like that may happen due to the pandemic, but Laween is there, and he will make sure our work continues. Laween, please.
Thank you, Anissa. Hi, everybody, and I hope everybody's doing well. My experience started with the API and in hiking trails in 2016 when I met Leon McCarron, because I'm working as a documentary maker. We were working on a documentary about the area, about the landscapes. So he started to talk about his experience and API activities in Jordan, in Palestine, in Turkey, in in the Middle East. So it was like a great experience for me to hear. And exactly like this webinar, how we started, how I saw the experience in Jordan, how I in Sinai, in Egypt, in Palestine. We heard a lot of stories, and I started to think, why not in Kurdistan region of Iraq? Why not in Kurdistan? Because we have an amazing landscapes. We have a great nature. We are deep in history, a mosaic of the religions in the area. So we started with an API to scout the area, to design and to find the hiking trails. And we walked all past 3 years, like 1,000 kilometers to create 175 line hiking trails in the area in the Kurdistan region. And for me, it was like a big chance, a great opportunity to share what we have, to show people, to create a trail that let everybody to come and hike in our area. We crossed the cities, villages, and the towns, which is 6,000 years old. We crossed an historical sites. For example, we started from Yazidi shrine place and then crossed the Zoroastrian shrine places, then Christian, then Jewish, then Muslim. So this makes like a mix of like a mosaic of the religions in the area. For the landscapes, we have like a snow-covered mountains, and then the next day we will cross the mountain with 40 degrees heat. And then I found it great to show my culture, to tell them our stories, to show them our identity, to let the people taste our food, to listen to our music. This makes you feel proud to be of this area. And the second point is that to change the concept of our area. We suffered a lot from the conflict. We suffered a lot from war. Many places, many villages have been destroyed in the war, like the last century or last 15 years. But now it's time to show people that no, our area is like our mountains are to hike them, not to hide from the war, not to be refugee there, to hike them, to enjoy their peace. I heard one story from our guide. He said that it's really an amazing quote, still in my mind. One of our guide was Peshmerga. Peshmerga is a fighter. He was fighting in the war. And he said that mountains protected us in the war, and we should protect them in the peace. API give the chance to make this relation stronger with the knowledge. Before, I was going to the mountains just to like a walk and just to enjoy the environment. But now, after working with API, I'm going to the mountains with like different vision, with a different ideas. It's kind of culture heritage preservation. When they come and see how we dress, and they taste our food, and when they listen to our music, I protect my culture heritage.
It's wonderful, Laween. It's just wonderful to see how you've grown from what most of us have been, enjoying the landscapes, to being there with a purpose.
Yes,
and you've
exactly.
expressed your purpose beautifully. Thank you. Let's see what we've got for questions. We had one question, which was, when are we going to walk if we're not walking this fall? And we are hoping, and in Arabic, hope has God attached to it, and so I'll say it, inshallah. We are hoping that by this springtime, we'll be able to host walks, and we'll let you know as soon as possible. But the condition of the pandemic makes everything very uncertain. So I know you have the bandwidth to be patient with us. But we will be walking again, and we will be ready, right, Laween, right, Hassan, right, everybody? We'll be ready to do that.
We will.
We will. We have a question here for Laween, which is it safe to visit the Kurdistan region of Iraq? And I think safety is an important question that a lot of us need to have addressed. Is it safe?
It's completely safe. What we did first 1 year is just to ensure the safety. We have some challenges, like some mountains have a landmines, but we in our trail, we ensure safety first, and it's completely safe to walk. And we walked for 4 years, and we hiked 1,000 kilometers with even no single problem or safety issues at all. So it's completely safe to walk the area.
I have found in my own experience that personally, my biggest problem that made me unsafe was I was not in as good shape as I should be for a long distance walk. And also from time to time, dehydration is threatening. So those are certain things that our guides will always make sure that we're watching out to drink plenty of water. Anyone else have anything to say? No, we spoke about safety. Anyone else want to address safety? I see, Hassan, it is dark where you are now. It is nighttime.
Yes, it's getting dark here. But regarding safety, that's always the question that comes, and the first thing for people when they just get introduced to new regions, especially with prehistory conflict or challenges like Palestine, like Kurdistan, Iraq, like Iraq. But actually, these regions, as much as people consider it with safety, it's the safest places maybe all over the planet. When you just go and see how the people are welcoming you, they assure your safety and security like the maximum they can do.
I just want to add one sentence.
Sure.
That's one of our goals, one of our aim of these hiking trails, to change this concept that our area is safe. So we changed a lot, we have been changed a lot. So this is one of our goals, to show that the area is completely safe through the hiking.
Everyone is responsible for their own safety as well. I mean, we may have a vaccine policy, we have a mask policy, but you need to check with your own foreign service department, your State Department, and find out what their recommendations are for you with regard to traveling in the region. A question for Alix: where would you love to walk next?
Anywhere. Oh, I would love to go to Kurdistan. I would love the Kurdish part of Iraq. Anywhere. You know, the experience, in some ways it was so similar to my own experience here, but it was in a dimension and with a kindness and a revelation that I've never really had before. So I would say anywhere, really.
A question here on access for people who cannot walk. And we have been designing live online tours so that you can have an experience of being in situ with a guide like Hassan or like Louine, who will bring you through a town or bring you on an area of a trail where there is connection in real time. So you can see what we're doing. We're planning a live online tour of Jerusalem in October, and our second live online tour of Bethlehem in December. So please check our website, www.abrahampath.org, and pay attention to the e-blasts that we send out, where we'll give you as much information as we can. Interesting question here from Ismail Amini. Does API have an initiative for Africans to physically join these activities? Well, Ismail, anybody can come. And you don't have to wait for API to walk in the region, by the way. These are not our trails. There are local trail associations, there are local tour operators, there are local guides, and we'll put you in touch with as many of them as we can, but they also have websites that you can access. We offer Abraham Path experiences, which are our curated tours. And that was what Hassan and Louine were both talking about. But Alix went on her own. She got the suggestion to connect with Isa. And I noticed in the chat that several of you know Isa. There's a question here from Moni, which is one of the most profound changes that happened during her pilgrimage. And she walked, I don't know, 1,000 miles or more to Jerusalem from Europe. What she says was the level of personal transformation in her beliefs and ideas. How is that for any of you?
I would say that I don't think you can walk anywhere without going on a personal transformation. The key for me is the walking, the doing it slowly and taking the time to meet people. So I wouldn't ever say I'd had a personal transformation all in one great blinding flash. But I think the act of meeting people and receiving hospitality from them always opens your eyes and makes you a broader person.
I agree.
Louise, I completely agree. I just wanted to bounce off on what on the question in a sense about like personal transformation. I think that my multiple trips to the Middle East, including my time in the Sinai and hopefully more time in the future have really helped me sort of push outside of my comfort zone and put myself, especially as a younger person who's exploring the world, trying to learn new things, put myself in uncomfortable positions, and also perhaps go on trips, meet people, go to places that I wouldn't necessarily think of, or for example, places that are difficult to get to or are not traveled as much. And so try to push those boundaries that we have, and really try to find beauty in places that are not as accessible or maybe as hidden from the world.
And I would just add that for me, I've been to the region a number of times as well. As I said in the beginning, I never really wasn't a part of the world that I thought I would ever go to, and it has become one of my very favorite parts on earth. And I say two things. I say the people who began as my colleagues in the exchanges have now become dear friends, and I keep up with them regularly, and I treasure their friendships. That's number one. And number two, as a conservationist, I always feel that you don't really know a place until you walk it. So by walking, you really, the landscape and the culture are revealed to you. And that's my favorite part about what the API does.
Alex, tagging onto that, a question from Tatiana, who says, what is the ideal recommended length for visiting any parts of these trails? Louise, you may have something to say about that too, being able to experience various aspects of the culture.
Well, I mean, having done a month, mostly, we didn't walk every day, but our walking average, it turned out, with all the tours around churches and goodness knows what, was 15 kilometers a day for 28 days. And that's a lot of walking. So I think when I'm putting together a journey, I will generally say do 2 days in one place. Sorry, I've just realized I've got a cat's tail has appeared. Hello. 2 days in one, 2 or 3 days in one place, and then have a break, because I just think you experience so much that you 2 to 3 days on the go, and then have a break, a rest break, you know, because you need time to process everything you've seen and write your diary and goodness knows what, and it feels like you're on the go the whole time, but actually ideally every 2 or 3 days stop for a little bit, you know. Otherwise I think you can keep going forever. I can keep going forever.
Right, because learning is never over, right?
Yeah.
At least I lived in Jordan for a whole year and just was scratching the surface of, you know, 13 visits to Petra and 7 or 8 to Jerash. And many visits to the path in Ajlun. I don't know. It's a tough one. Alex, do you have any advice on that?
I think you use your instincts. You know, I think start with, well, you have to organize yourself, but I think a week is a good amount of time, but I've gone out for months before too. So I think you use your instincts around the place and who the people are that you are going with and the guides that you have found, and all of those factors help you decide how long it should be.
Yeah.
We have a question here from Oliver asking Hassan, what was one of the most curious situations you've been in with walkers? I'm sure you have plenty of stories. Give us one of them, Hassan.
Well, there is many and a lot, and that happens always. But one of the most curious stories that I faced when I picked, my hometown is famous with eggplants. Batir eggplant is a well-known kind of vegetable that grows in the area. And naturally, when we walk in the field, when we see the eggplants, we pick it and we eat it raw, like cucumbers. And the worker was to me, what are you doing? Are you eating a raw eggplant that we never seen it anywhere else in the world? Then I discovered that most of them, they were vegetarians. And when they tasted for the first time, they said, okay, this is the best for the rest of our journey.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Indeed. I think that satisfies. Thank you, Hassan. Ah, Louise from Ian McIntosh. Has Gertrude Bell been an inspiration for your journeys?
I mean, I did read about Gertrude Bell, but it was, oh, for goodness sake, I've got all the books on my shelf. Oh, hang on a minute. Freya Stark was the great inspiration. I have to say, I don't have the money to travel like they travel. It's a whole different ball game.
It's a whole different time. I mean, that's 100 years ago.
exactly.
The whole geography was different.
Yeah.
The regional governance was different. It was part of the Ottoman Empire. It was
Yeah, I'm very wary of the possibility of being a colonial. So I'm very cautious about that. You know, post-colonial Western is a dangerous place to be.
Yeah. How do we prevent ourselves from being that?
We don't assume we know anything.
It's a good one.
Mm.
It's a
But
good one.
it's something to be very conscious of, especially in Palestine.
Well, I would think in Iraq also, it's something
Iraq,
to be
yeah.
conscious of.
Anywhere
especially-
where we kind of basically, you know, went out and tried to pretend the territory was ours is something to be very, very conscious of and very humble about, actually. Very humble.
Well, I will say that as the a daughter of Iraq, not a direct daughter, but my father's from Iraq, I feel a lot of responsibility for what my nation has done to destroy my father's. And in a certain sense, although I am approaching it from a professional place, it's a personal energy that comes to trying to have our trails in Iraq be successful and generate revenue in marginalized communities and allow people to come and see folks and meet folks like Laween and, you know, see and be seen and have those relationships develop, which, as Alix has said, can be friendships for a lifetime. This is from Terry Sliba. Have we ever encountered people who did not want us there?
I got a partial answer to that one from my experience in Turkey. It wasn't that we weren't wanted, it was that tourists were an unknown quantity. And in the Kurdish territories that we were walking through, there was a great deal of concern that the introduction of Western people would disturb their culture. So they were going very slowly and very cautiously. And, you know, it was critical for us that we showed respect. So it's caution rather than not wanting to be there.
I've got a last question. What did you learn about yourself
Learning
in the
about
process
yourself.
of that walk in Sinai, let's say? What did you learn about yourself?
I think one thing, especially my walk, the morning walk to the top of the Mount Sinai, was that even though I've never considered myself like a spiritual person or someone that I've been exposed to different religions, but I've never attached myself or had an individual belief. I did feel something special at the top of the mountain, and I don't know if it was because I was so tired or because it was so beautiful and so inspiring, and it was so awesome to be able to see to be at this such holy place. But I definitely felt like there was an energy there between the people who had walked in the group with us and also other people who had come up, and just the importance of the place and the moment and the time. And I think that perhaps something within me or awakened, whether that was a spirituality or a need to understand the world in a different way.
Thank you. Alix?
Well, you know, for me, it's been more the entire experience of traveling and getting to know people in the Middle East, how more and more I feel a citizen of the world, and the comfort and ease with which I can be part of that of culture, you know, people who walk with me or host me, whatever. There's an ease that I didn't know would be there because there's so much commonality of spirit and interest and landscape and everything. It's really, it becomes more apparent when you walk in amongst people who are your kindred spirits in a completely different part of the world. And I absolutely loved it.
Hassan, what is it for you? What would you have missed out knowing about yourself if you weren't involved in this particular work?
That it's never end up. Every time I find myself into something, that walking has offered me a new chance every day to learn. I am an engineer, I'm an environmentalist, I start designing hiking trails, I'm a guide, I'm a fixer for cameras and videos and filmmaking. I am an owner of a guest house, I'm an owner of a restaurant, now all these things coming through walking. It opens my eyes to learn so many things. And it also taught me an important thing, that it was an old saying for Hamza bin Abd al-Muttalib, who was telling to Muhammad back then, يا ابن أخي عرفت أن الله وأنا أجوب الصحراء في الليل أن الله أكبر من أن يكون داخل غرفة واحدة. That he was his belief, that I knew it before when I was walking all time in the desert, that God is much bigger to be put inside a room.
You learn in the desert that God is too big to fit into a room.
Yep.
Yeah. And you, Laween?
I learned that we have responsibilities. Before going to the mountains, I was going to the mountain with no responsibilities. So I learned that it's our duty to protect this land. It made me feel proud of myself to be from this part of the world.
Thank you, Laween. And Louise?
Yeah, that's a difficult one. I don't think for me it's what I've learned about myself, because I was already engaged in a number of things which made the Abraham Path a very natural choice for me. But I agree with Laween. I think what it's done is deepened my commitment and sense of responsibility towards our planet, really. I sometimes jokingly say to people that since I've been walking in the Middle East, I've only ever had one bath a week, because I am really, really aware of water. And it's absolutely true. I do flannel washes, but I use very little water at home. And I try to do everything I can to live in a way that is not wasteful. And, I think, again, I think walking the path has really deepened my understanding of really the changes you have to make in your own life.
Anissa, how about you?
How about me?
Yeah.
Well, I've learned certainly that when I'm absolutely exhausted and at my last drop of energy, that there's more. I've learned I can't control everything. And as executive director of this organization, I sometimes feel like I need to make everything happen, but I can't. I can't stop the pandemic. I can't force people to be donors. I can't, change the borders. I can't, those kinds of things. So there's a way I can achieve peace within myself, Alix. Once I stop fighting myself, I can get out of my own way and achieve some peace and recognize what we have accomplished. 1,200 miles of walking trails that other people are benefiting from.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It is amazing.
People people being seen, people experiencing being part of a larger world, and people experiencing being part of a smaller world. So I'm very, very proud of what we've done. And thanks to you, Louise. Thanks to you, Alix. Thanks to you, Hassan. Thanks to you, Noe. Thanks to you, Laween, for your contributions. Thanks to all of you that participated with your questions. Thanks to John Atik, and thanks to Raven El Khashram for your behind the scenes work. We have a terrific backstage crew that we couldn't do without. And we hope very much to see you in the future. This has been a wonderful opportunity for me, again, to learn, even if I'm sitting in my chair. I learned from you through the screen. I'm Anissa Mehdi, thanking you all for attending, for being with us, and on behalf of everyone at the Abraham Path Initiative. See you next time. We have some photos for you to look at as we say goodbye.